billions of dollars, thousands of tons of concrete, and the world's most advanced supercomputing systems. All of it was just defeated by exactly 11 rodents. In 2009, the Scottish government released 11 beavers into a dying river, without engineers, without spending any public funds. Just 5 years later, they had single-handedly built a gigantic system of dams, reducing peak flooding by up to 60%, retaining 24 million liters of water, and automatically filtering chemical toxins. The brightest minds in history must have watched in awe this design made of mud and branches. Humanity had spent centuries building enormous concrete walls to control the flow of water. But these 11 beavers proved that all that engineering theory had failed in the face of the laws of nature. What really happened when this ecological experiment, the riskiest in history, began? By 1900, there wasn't a single beaver left in Scotland. In reality, across the entire territory of Europe and Asia, a species that had once possessed hundreds of millions of beavers, a substance secreted by the beaver's scent glands, sought after by perfume and medicine makers, and valued as much as gold. By the end of the 16th century, the last beaver in Scotland had completely disappeared. Its 4 centuries of absence did not merely signify the disappearance of an animal species. It signified the collapse of the entire hydrological system of a vast region. Without the beaver dams to contain them, the streams lost their meandering nature. They became straight, violent, and rushing conduits. When heavy rains fell, there was nothing to stem their force. The water roared downstream at maximum speed, breaking riverbanks, sweeping away millions of tons of fertile soil, and submerging villages. In contrast, when drought arrived, the earth cracked in just a few weeks. The vast wetlands, which had previously acted like enormous sponges for the soil, dried up completely. Thousands of species of birds, fish, and insects disappeared with them. Human engineers tried to intervene by building concrete dikes and dredging ever deeper channels. Billions of dollars were invested, but the floods continued to worsen. We made a grave mistake. Humanity tried to control the water when what the water needed was to be contained. This truth was only revealed when 11 beavers from Norway set foot in Knapdale Forest. In May 2009, the Scottish government finally yielded to pressure from scientists. It allowed the first mammal reintroduction in the region's history. 11 beavers from Norway were released into a 44 square kilometer forest area in Knapdale. But this was not a symbolic act. It was a gigantic biological laboratory with an unprecedented level of surveillance. If these beavers destroyed farmland, flooded roads, or reduced fish stocks, the government would immediately order their removal or relocation. Hydrologists from several of the most prestigious universities blanketed the entire forest with flow meters, water pressure sensors, infrared camera traps, and chemical analysis equipment. Every branch nibbled, every rising puddle was recorded in real-time data. On the very first night, under a light rain, the beavers began to work. The instinct encoded in their DNA over millions of years was triggered by a single factor, the sound of running water. Anywhere they hear water flowing strongly, the beavers interpret it as a structural crack that needs sealing. They felled saplings with their extraordinarily powerful jaws, dragged branches into the stream, and stuffed mud and rocks into the gaps. No blueprints, no planning meetings, no bulldozers. They worked silently through the night. In just 1 year, a single straight stream was transformed into a complex labyrinth of dozens of dams, ponds, and interconnected waterways. But just as the first pools began to expand, a huge danger emerged, a crisis that could bring the entire project to a halt forever. The biggest threat to the beaver project had a name: Atlantic salmon. This fish species is the economic and ecological backbone of the region. Adult salmon must swim upstream to spawn. Immediately, authorities and fishermen raised a crucial question: how can a salmon get through a wall of branches and mud more than a meter high? If the beaver dams were blocking the salmon's spawning grounds, this project would be a disaster. But the data obtained caused a major stir. Beaver dams aren't completely sealed concrete walls. They're porous and allow water to pass through. During the migration season, heavy rains raise the water level, which spills over the dam's edge and creates natural steps that allow adult salmon to jump across with ease. What was truly astonishing was the juvenile salmon. Underwater cameras and observation dives revealed that the calm pools behind the beaver dams had become the most perfect nursery environment on the planet for young fish. Instead of being swept away by the fast-flowing current or exhausted by it, the salmon fry had deep, nutrient-rich, and safe pools in which to grow. The size and survival rate of juvenile salmon in areas with beavers skyrocketed. The absence of beavers for the past 400 years was, in fact, what had harmed the salmon. But that wasn't all. Chemical analysis teams reported another strange phenomenon. The water flowing out of the beaver dams was much cleaner than the water entering them. The ponds created by the beavers function as a giant biological filtration system. The water's velocity slows, causing sediment, nitrates, and phosphorus from agricultural fertilizers to settle at the bottom of the pond instead of flowing directly to the sea. Bacteria present in this layer of mud break down the toxic chemical compounds. Subsequent water quality measurement reports published figures that were hard to believe. The concentration of toxic nitrates from agricultural fertilizers was reduced by up to 40%, and phosphorus was reduced by almost 50% when the water flowed through the beaver dam system. An artificial wastewater treatment plant with equivalent capacity would cost the government at least $5 million to build and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to operate. Beavers do this completely free of charge in exchange for a few willow branches. By the 5th year of the experiment, scientists at the University of Exeter decided to compare the actual data with the most advanced computer models for predicting floods. The results forced engineers to completely rewrite the textbooks. When a major storm hit the area, instead of a massive amount of water rushing down the river in a devastating flash flood, the beavers' interconnected system of dams broke up that destructive force. The water surged over the first dam and lost 10% of its energy. It surged over the second dam and lost another 15%. By the time it passed through the chain of 10 dams, the flash flood had already been reduced by up to 60%. The violent flow was completely neutralized. Drone footage showed that in just one small area, beaver dams retained up to 24 million liters of floodwater. The water was pushed across the riverbank and seeped deep into the soil, replenishing underground aquifers that had been depleted for generations. This is the latest information that has forced the world to rethink its view of this animal, its ability to withstand wildfires, and its capacity to store carbon. During periods of extreme heat and wildfires that ravaged the continent, satellite cameras captured a striking image. Amid tens of thousands of hectares of forest reduced to ashes, the wetlands managed by beavers remained green and lush, forming emerald green havens. Dr. Emily Fairfax, a leading ecological hydrologist, published satellite images of some of North America's most devastating wildfires. The results were extraordinary. While the high-temperature fire reduced everything to white ash, areas with beaver dams created a buffer zone where the vegetation survival rate reached up to 80%. These emerald oases not only halted the fire's advance, but also served as a safe haven for thousands of wild animals, from bears and deer to rare fleeing birds. Their capacity to store groundwater is so powerful that even during the worst droughts on record, these wetlands continue to hold abundant water and refuse to succumb to the extreme weather. At the same time, the layer of flooded mud behind the beaver dams stores a huge amount of carbon. Decaying wood, roots, and fallen leaves that remain submerged don't decompose into carbon dioxide, but are instead trapped in the muddy bottom. Unwittingly, beavers are becoming one of the sharpest weapons in the fight against climate change. The irony reaches its peak when you do the economic calculations for building an artificial reservoir with a flood mitigation capacity equivalent to that of a beaver population. The government would have to spend tens of millions of dollars on concrete, steel, land expropriations, and annual maintenance. Concrete cracks and breaks down over time. Meanwhile, the beaver system repairs itself completely. When a storm destroys a dam, just 3 days later, the beaver colony has already finished building a new, stronger one with zero maintenance costs. The data doesn't lie. In November 2016, the Scottish government officially declared that beavers are allowed to stay forever. Knapdale's experiment had been a resounding success. But nature has its own way of working, far beyond the borders humans draw on maps. While scientists were busy monitoring the 11 beavers in the test area, something unthinkable was happening on the other side of the country. Beavers that had escaped from zoos, reproduced on their own, or were secretly released by environmental activists had quietly established new populations in the Tayside region. The overall study data stunned authorities. From 150 individuals in 2012, the population of this species grew exponentially. By 2026, that population had exploded well beyond the 2,500 mark, occupying and reshaping hundreds of kilometers of waterways. In May 2019, Parliament officially passed a law making the beaver a strictly protected species, placing it on par with dolphins and eagles. Anyone who hunts them or destroys their dams without permission will face severe legal penalties. This revolution didn't stop at the border. The truth about the beaver's capabilities sparked a global wave. Numerous countries began beaver release campaigns. The UK recently announced that it will allow the release of wild beavers throughout the country. Scotland's model has ignited an ecological race worldwide. In arid US states like California and Utah, authorities are using helicopters to release beavers in remote areas to combat extreme droughts. In Bavaria, Germany, the presence of beavers has already saved villages millions of euros in flood cleanup costs. To resolve conflicts with farmers whose land is flooded, modern engineers no longer seek to eliminate beavers. Instead, they have invented so-called beaver deceivers, precisely engineered underground plastic pipe systems designed to trick the beaver's hearing and allow dam water to drain discreetly without triggering its building instincts. For the first time in history, human technology is being used to cooperate with this species rather than eradicate it. Of course, this explosion comes at a cost. Farmland in low-lying areas along riverbanks has been flooded. Some farmers are furious to see their apple trees gnawed and uprooted, and compensation programs have been established. The government is funding millions of dollars to install flow-regulating devices. It's a complex agreement, but it's a worthwhile one to save the future of water. After 400 years of arrogantly believing we could dominate nature with mechanical force and reinforced concrete, we humans have finally acknowledged our limitations. The biggest lesson from releasing 11 beavers into a dying river isn't about the technique of building dams. It's a lesson in humility. We discovered that sometimes the greatest engineering has nothing to do with human engineers. A complex system capable of self-repair, resisting wildfires, filtering water, and stopping floods in the most perfect way was already designed by a biological structure millions of years ago. We don't need to build higher walls. We just need to take a step back, give back space, and allow the true architects of the earth to return and do their work. So, in your opinion, if the region where you live were to face frequent flooding, would you trust a human-made project of concrete levees worth billions of dollars, or a population of beavers working silently at night? Leave your opinion in the comments section below this video, and let's talk together. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the most impactful stories about how nature is reshaping the world. Until next time.